Welcome to the Random Bytes podcast, available on Spreaker.com, iTunes, Google Play, and just added to iHeartRadio. A new podcast every day featuring interviews and a unique take on the world we live in. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Random Bytes. Here is your host, Alan Wayne. Welcome to the 41st episode of Random Bytes. I am your host, Alan Wayne. Today we lost a country music pioneer. Yes, Glen Travis Campbell passed away at the age of 81 today. An American singer, songwriter, musician, television host, I didn't know that before today, and actor. He had a series of hits in the 60s and 70s, and even had that television show, which I mentioned before, the Glen Campbell Good Time Hour, that ran for 3 seasons from 69 to 72. During his 50 years in show business, Campbell released more than 70 albums. He sold 45 million records, 12 RIAA gold albums, 4 platinum albums, and 1 double platinum album. That is amazing. That's amazing. Some of his great songs, over 80 that were on the Billboard Country Chart, Billboard Hot 100, or Adult Contemporary, included Gentle on My Mind, By the Time I Get to Phoenix, Wichita Lineman, Galveston, Rhinestone Cowboy, and Southern Nights. A couple of my favorites were Galveston and Gentle on My Mind, but I have to be in the mood for Wichita Lineman. It's an interesting song for me. I was working for the county. That's a great song. So, when Glen Campbell was young, he was born in Billstown, a tiny community near Delight in Pike County, Arkansas, to John Wesley and Carrie Dell. He started playing guitar as a youngster and credited his Uncle Boo for teaching him that instrument. That's cool, man. I like the name Boo. In 1954, Campbell moved to Albuquerque to join his uncle's band, known as Dick Bills and the Sandia Mountain Boys. That sounds like a down-home band right there. I would have liked to have seen him. He appeared on his uncle's radio show, and in 1958 formed his own band, the Western Wranglers, so definitely a country artist there. In 1960, though, Campbell moved to Los Angeles to become a session musician, and he became a part of a group known as the Wrecking Crew. Now, this was a group of backing musicians that played behind some of the greatest acts of the 60s, including Bobby Darin, Ricky Nelson, Dean Martin, Nat King Cole, the Monkees, Nancy Sinatra, Merle Haggard, Jan and Dean, Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra, Ronnie Dove, and even played for Phil Spector. In 1961, he left the Champs, which was another band he was with, Champs of Tequila fame, and was subsequently signed by Crest Records. In 1962, he signed with Capitol, and after minor initial success with Too Late to Worry, Too Blue to Cry, his first single for the label, and Kentucky Means Paradise, released by the Green River Boys featuring Glen Campbell, a string of unsuccessful singles and albums followed. Keep in mind, this gentleman had multiple platinum albums, multiple gold albums, sold 45 million albums worldwide, but at first he didn't succeed, but he kept going. So for those of you who are out there who need a little inspiration, derive it from Glen Campbell. He was something else. In 1964, he began to appear on television as a regular on Star Route, a syndicated series, and ABC Shindig, also Hollywood Jamboree. So he's making his rounds around L.A., getting his name out there, becoming known. In 1965, he had his biggest solo hit at the time with a version of Buffy St. Marie's Universal Soldier. When asked about the pacifist message of the song, he said that, quote, people who are advocating burning draft cards should be hung, end of quote. So, kind of went against his beliefs, but at the same time he was doing what he had to do to get himself out there. Can't fault him for that. Campbell played guitar on the Beach Boys' 1966 album Pet Sounds, which I recall one of the guitar players I used to play with told me that was the best album ever, as far as guitar work, and Glen Campbell was right on it. And I listen to it these days, and even 50 years later, the production quality is amazing on Pet Sounds. It's an amazing album. In April of that year, he joined Ricky Nelson on a tour through the Far East, playing bass. So he was just getting whatever gig he could. Then Burning Bridges hit, which became a top country hit in early 1967. And then off of that came Gentle on My Mind, which is a heart-wrenching, just gritty, real song about what it's like to be down and out and yet to have somebody you love keeping you going, keeping you moving, keeping you doing what you need to do. And then, after Gentle on My Mind, came By the Time I Get to Phoenix, and then later in 1967, I Want to Live, and Wichita Lineman in 1968. Campbell won 4 Grammy Awards for his performances on Gentle on My Mind and By the Time I Get to Phoenix. And in 1967, Campbell was also the uncredited lead vocalist on My World Fell Down by Sagittarius, a studio group. The song reached number 70 on the Billboard Top 100. His biggest hits in the late 60s were songs written by Jimmy Webb, By the Time I Get to Phoenix, Wichita Lineman, Galveston, and Where's the Playground, Susie? An album of mainly Webb-penned compositions, Reunion, the songs of Jimmy Webb, was released in 1974, but it produced no hit single records. Wichita Lineman was selected as one of the greatest songs of the 20th century by Mojo Magazine in 1997 and by Blender in 1991. With Campbell's session work connections, he hosted major names in music on his television show, which debuted in 1969, including The Beatles, on film of course, Bread, David Gates, The Monkees, Neil Diamond, Linda Ronstadt, Johnny Cash, Merle Haggard, Willie Nelson, the list goes on and on and on, Roger Miller. I mean, this guy, he knew them all, and he had them all on his show, and they were more than happy to play on his show. After the cancellation of his CBS series in 1972, Campbell remained a regular on network television. He had these movie star good looks and this kind of grit to him that was really popular in the early 70s. He co-starred in a made-for-television movie Strange Homecoming with Robert Culp, and up-and-coming teen idol Leif Garrett. He hosted a number of television specials. In the 70s, specials were like a thing. You know, you put on a show for 2 hours, and it's all sorts of different kinds of variety and things like that. Specials were a huge thing in the 70s, and Glen Campbell hosted quite a few of them. So, in the mid-70s, Campbell got his music career going again with Rhinestone Cowboy and Southern Nights. He also had hits named Sunflower, which was written by Neil Diamond, and Country Boy, You Got Your Feet in L.A., So, Rhinestone Cowboy was Campbell's largest selling single, initially with over 2 million copies sold. Southern Nights, which was his other number one pop rock country crossover hit, was generated with the help of Jimmy Webb and Jerry Reed, who inspired the famous guitar lick introduction to the song, which was the most played jukebox number of 1977. Now, 1977, you're in the teeth of disco, and Glen Campbell made his mark during that time, so kudos to Glen for that. Glen Campbell continued his career through the 80s, was in several different films, voiced a Presley-like rooster, Chanticleer, in the Don Bluth film Rockadoodle. Pardon me. He also gave up smoking on March 15, 1992, and believed his singing voice improved as a result. He was featured on Behind the Music, A&E Network's biography, and he was also credited with giving Alan Jackson his first big break. Campbell met Jackson's wife, a flight attendant with Piedmont Airlines at Atlanta Airport, and gave her his publishing manager's business card. And the rest is history, as they say. Campbell was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2005. It was announced in 2008 that Campbell was returning to his signature label Capitol to release a new album, Meet Glen Campbell. His album was released on August 19th, and with this album he branched off in a different music direction, covering tracks from artists such as Travis, U2, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Jackson Browne, and Foo Fighters, kind of taking the Johnny Cash, Rick Rubin route there. Unfortunately, in 2010, a then-farewell album titled Ghost on the Canvas was announced, which served as a companion to Meet Glen Campbell. Ghost on the Canvas was released on August 30th, 2011, with collaborations that include Paul Westerberg, Jacob Dylan, Chris Isaak, Rick Nielsen, and Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins. I mean, you can't be an asshole and play with all these people. He just got to be cool as hell and respected. And what Glen Campbell wanted, Glen Campbell got. Following his early 2011 Alzheimer's diagnosis, Campbell embarked on a final goodbye tour with 3 of his children joining him in his backup band. His final show was late 2012 in Napa. After the end of the tour, Campbell entered the studio in his hometown of Nashville to record what would be his final album, Adios, which would not be revealed until 5 years later. According to his wife, Kim Campbell, he wanted to preserve what magic was left, end quote, in what would be his final recordings. In 2013, Campbell recorded his final song, I'm Not Gonna Miss You, during what would be his last recording sessions. And then, a documentary in 2014, Glen Campbell, I'll Be Me, came out in 2014, as mentioned before. And in 2015, he was nominated along with songwriter Julian Raymond for Best Original Song at the 87th Academy Awards. In April 2017, Campbell's final album, Adios, was announced, featuring 12 songs from his final 2012-2013 sessions. It was released on June 9th, 2017. And as he fought his battle with Alzheimer's, his family kept his fans up to date. His daughter recently tweeting as early as 2 days ago, or as recently as 2 days ago, saying that, quote, he loved a good slice of cake, and that while other people seem to be bitter with their diagnosis and bitter with their ways, Glen Campbell was always smiling, always happy, even when he was forgetful, and on occasion there would be a spark of the old Glen, like he would be sitting at dinner with his daughter, and he would remember a joke that they had shared years previous. We'll never know what it's like to have Alzheimer's unless we have it, and what it's like to see your mind slowly degrade right in front of your eyes and feel it happen. But Glen Campbell sure played this hand right. He accepted his mortality. He gave his fans final goodbyes and final albums, and he will always be remembered, the great rhinestone cowboy, Glen Campbell, dead today at the age of 81. Thank you for listening to the Random Bytes podcast. Remember to subscribe on iTunes or Google Play, and remember to look us up on iHeartRadio. Also, become a part of the radio revolution by donating on Patreon, www.patreon.com. Just look for the Random Internet Radio Show. And don't forget, you can hear the Random Internet Radio Show live every Saturday night, only on Spreaker.com. Thank you very much for listening, and until next time, always be random.